Hello, everyone. ARKO Art and Tech Festival and the online international symposium we are hosting today. Very nice to meet you. My name is 𝐸𝐵𝐭𝐲, the General Director of ARKO Art Center. This symposium is being held in conjunction with the ARKO Art and Tech Festival, which is hosted by the Arts Council Korea and the ARKO Art Center. So let me give you some background. Indoor and outdoor exhibitions we're having, but online platform and live art and symposium, we have prepared various programs as part of this event. So in the last 1.5 years, we were going through a pandemic, and we discussed with various art actors how, as museums, we can react and respond to the disaster and the social changes. Due to the pandemic, 13% of global museums, including art museums, will be closed forever. This was a prospect by ICOM, the International Council of Museums. So we now have to think about our raison d'être. So what kind of a future we can expect from the museum when we have to close our doors to the visitors at the instruction of the government? So starting from last year, ARKO Art Center held a number of workshops to think about the future direction for the museums. So we identify 4 keywords, which are utility, inclusivity, collaboration, and sharing. And we also set up operational strategies. So the Nothing Makes Itself was a kind of experiment to see how ARKO Art Center's new vision applies to our operation. Recently, a lot of museums in Korea are dealing with the new perspectives about the new world we are living. So it's not just we don't want this to be a one-off event, our exhibition. We want to make sure how our world, the society, and the art and the technology is connected with each other. So in a disaster situation, why we have to continue doing art, and why museums should continue to exist, we thought about those reasons. So I hope this symposium will be a place where we connect different experiences and expertise from different areas to create a new type of art ecosystem. So we want to be able to spread widely our ARKO Art Center's vision. So let me introduce today's symposium. So today's symposium's topic, the theme is Nothing Makes Itself. So this is a 2-day program. So yesterday on day 1, on the 30th of November, that was day 1, we dealt with the topic of artistic imagination through technology in the climate crisis era. Hyunju, the head of the Ecological Art Institute, was served as a moderator. So we looked at how digital technology can contribute to overcoming the climate crisis. Today is day 2. Today's topic is Future Museums, Practice and Activism. So today, art policies relate to climate action. So we have invited various experts and researchers working in this field to discuss various activities that we are engaging in today to recover the damaged environment of the Earth, and with the art and culture's value at the center. Now, let me introduce 5 speakers today. First, Ms. Catherine Bothrill is currently the CEO of a pilot company which provides solutions to homes and corporations for carbon neutrality. And in 2007, Julie's Bicycle nonprofit organization was founded in London to respond to climate crisis. So she was involved in the founding of this organization. She's still working as the senior researcher. Ms. Yasmin Ostendorf is the founder of the Green Art Lab Alliance, which was founded in 2012, which is an organization which involves 50 organizations worldwide. And Ms. Kim Sung-eun is a museologist and cultural anthropologist, is the curator of Baeknamjung Art Center and Liu Museum, senior researcher she is. And currently she is serving as a Director General of Baeknamjung Art Center. And Diane Drew-Bay is leading the international online community and think tank We Are Museum at the moment, which was founded in 2007 in Berlin, and is developing strategies to respond to the ecological and art changes in the era of digital technology. Lastly, Mr. T.J. Demos is an art history professor at California Santa Cruz University and is also a director at the Creative Ecology Center. His research area is where the visual arts and political ecology meet. So we have invited these very important 5 speakers. So we're going to have presentations by them with a focus on climate action and climate justice. So we're going to play the talks, which is pre-recorded, which are 7 to 8 minutes. So I'm going to see you in the second part of today's program. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Catherine Bottrell and I'm Associate of Julie's Bicycle, and I'm delighted to be participating in ARKO's online symposium looking at environmental and climate action of the visual arts, and we'll be sharing a few insights and reflections on the Art to Zero. In the last couple of years, we have seen hundreds, if not thousands, of artists and organizations declaring a climate and ecological emergency and joining the movement to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees as set out in the Paris Climate Agreement. There are 7 dimensions in the ways that the arts community are responding to climate and environment. And the 7 of these are first, the artwork itself. More artists are exploring these themes in their creativity and in their practice. 7 is the activism, artists and organizations lending their name to advocate for change in society. 3rd are organizations putting in climate and environment into the heart of their mission and purpose and building the practices and programming that align to that purpose to protect our climate and environment. The 4th is design and innovation. The sector is creative by its very heart and nature, and they're bringing that to bear in how creating new ways of doing, and we're seeing this in the creation of exhibitions and in touring. And this will be a very valuable contribution that the sector makes, not just within the sector, but beyond. And then collaboration has always been really important to the arts, and we're seeing some extraordinary partnerships bringing together artists, institutions across art forms within place all the way through into global kind of dialogue and activity to create change. 6 is there are a number of pathfinding organizations such as Julie's Bicycle and the Gallery Climate Coalition that are really supporting the sector to do the work of embedding good environmental practice into place so that the arts can amplify its voice. And then the 7th is policy change. And this is seeing that climate change isn't just a science or economic or technical issue, it is a cultural issue. And there's some wonderful policy examples. For example, the UK Arts Council has been supporting its almost 1,000 organisations to embed good environmental practices for the last 10 years as a condition of their funding. This programme is delivered in partnership with Julie's Bicycle, and we support organisations in their carbon footprint, their policy and their action, but also across all these other dimensions to really create the change needed. And Julie's Bicycle has been in existence, for those of you who are not aware of us, for the last 13 years. And we were set up with the sole purpose to support the creativity and cultures to power action on the environment, and with a particular focus on climate action. We do this by building the data and evidence case for change, providing the tools, networks, and resources, as well as working in partnership to advocate for change in policy, and had a strong presence at COP26. In our 13-year journey, what are the things we have learned? We've learned that culture is an ecosystem. It is in relationship to its ecology and into the economy, and therefore, just as I outlined, those 7 dimensions should be seen as in a holistic and integrated whole. Creativity and the content and the art that comes from it, and the imaginations and the possible, will come when will thrive under positive support. Third, there must be a focus on purpose, and culture and arts must align to the 1.5 degree goal, as well as the Sustainable Development Goals that are 17 goals that many nations have signed up to achieve by 2030. Also, it is critical that the arts have the data and evidence to generate the business and creative and ethical case for action. Otherwise, it's very difficult if you're operating in the dark of where to prioritize your resources and what would be most effective. In order to build that evidence and data, it is important that we've learned to develop the learning skills and facilitation within the sector to exchange good practice. And it's events like this that can really help facilitate that dialogue. As I've said, that collaboration and partnership is absolutely fundamental in breaking the silos. Change won't happen if we are all working in our silos. We must develop new ways of working, and connected to that is we must champion and empower leadership. And that leadership is within your organizations, within the communities that you work, and across regions and working internationally. And that leadership isn't about the individual, it is about the group. And then we must advocate for culture as a driver for climate action. It's not just about the economics and technology that will deliver change. The climate dilemma has been brought about with our culture and our values, and then a re-examination of that storytelling of change is absolutely critical, and no better than the arts to help create that space for conversation of what damage we've done, but also that the future possible imaginations and how we get there into the future. And then this is a journey, and we must communicate our journey along the way and celebrate our achievements. And everything matters. Working across all these areas will really make a difference. At Julie at Bicycle, we undertook a carbon footprint of the global visual arts sector, and found that when we look at the buildings, the shipment, the travel of visitors and professionals, the footprint is significant. It is 70 million tons when we look at it in its entirety, and 18 million tons per annum of carbon dioxide when we look at the direct influence that arts organizations, artists, art festivals, etc. can have. And what does that pollution equate to? Well, it equates to almost 9,000 wind turbines. So that's the amount of infrastructure that would need to be built to compensate for the emissions produced by the art sector. But then if we look at the 18 million tons, which is within the purview of organizations and artists to influence, 2/3 of that is related to our buildings, both the artists, students, where they create work, but also the galleries that are presenting the work. And thinking about how we use energy in those buildings is important, as well as the shipment and movement of the creative work. But a key insight of this research was the importance that it is of taking art to the audiences, because if we can create a green infrastructure to present work and can provide green transport options to our visitors, then we can create a green ecosystem for the enjoyment and exploration of art. From the conclusions of that piece of work, Art to Zero, which is available from the Julie's Bicycle website, the full report, but what we found in gathering this and undertaking that piece of work is one that the visual arts are not yet ready prepared. Many organizations are not yet carbon footprinting themselves and their activities regularly, and without undertaking and looking at that data and sharing that data, we can't possibly know how to reduce that impact. The second is the sector does need a roadmap. It won't happen overnight to meet the 1.5 degrees goal, and therefore over the next 10, 20 years, that roadmap needs to be built and we need to work together to achieve it. There are incredible stories of excellence, and I'm sure participating in this symposium are involved in many of those projects, but we need to do more and we need to ensure join up, because the commitment is evident. There does seem to be a enthusiasm, commitment and understanding that the arts has a role to play in taking climate action. But we also know that, just like in the example of Oliver and Tate, how important it is that the artist's work is supported by the institutions, whether it's the funding, whether it's the host presenting organizations. And there is leadership that's needed. So it's every organization taking part in this endeavor to reduce our carbon footprint and respond to climate developing a climate response, and also telling story and engaging our visitors in that journey. In the last 2 years, globally, it's been very difficult, and the arts have been greatly impacted by the global pandemic of COVID-19. But this does offer a window of opportunity to really come back and build a green arts ecosystem and a green society that really tackles climate change. And at Julie's Bicycle, and I'm sure many on this participating in this symposium would agree that the visual arts can make an exceptional contribution in helping us shift and change our relationship to the natural world. So I'd like to leave us with this question to open into discussion. What do you think are the exceptional contributions that the visual arts can make for climate action? Look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Jasmine Ostendorf. I am a curator from the Netherlands, currently based in Mexico, working with Colectivo Amasijo, which is all-female art collective working on the politics of food, you know, the relationship with the arts and territory and agriculture and land use. Particularly in relation to indigenous communities and women. I am also writing my book called Mycelium as Methodology, which actually looks at biomimicry for system design in order to develop systems and structures that can replace current systems and structures that are rooted in injustices, let's say, so that are, you know, rooted in histories of colonialism, of patriarchy, of capitalism, you know them. And the mycelium is the underground network of the fungus. Some people also call it the wood wide web, because it's like really a communication network through which the fungus communicates with other species, so for instance with trees and plants. And it's not only communication, but it's also resource exchange. So that could be nutrients, that could be water, for instance. And I think this is a really interesting system to look at. First of all, because it's a decentralized system, but it's also a system that is based on symbiosis. So it's based on mutually beneficial exchange. So the book is really creating like this model for collaboration, particularly in an art context, that is based on symbiosis. So on this mutually beneficial exchange. That model is also then the foundation for the Green Art Lab Alliance, which is a knowledge alliance of 50 organizations in Europe, Latin America, and also Asia, who are, strategizing their collaborations on different types of environmental challenges. So we are working on different topics, including ocean and river water protection, on ecocide, on food, so food art research, on materiality, so like future materials, like materials for artists that are biodegradable, natural, or otherwise sustainable, like non-toxic, and various other different topics. So the idea is really to have this networked approach in order to address these systems that have been very unfair for a lot of people. You can again think of financial systems, or how working relationships are defined. Part of the alliance is also a foundation called GALAS, Green Art Lab Alliance Support, and through this foundation we also give advice to all of our partners on like strategic, legal or economic models, again, that are based on symbiosis. So it's really radically stepping away from the idea of extreme hierarchies, but also of capitalism, so that there needs to be, that everything is driven by the market. The thing that connects us, or that is like the driving force behind our collaboration, is actually to fight climate injustice. So the idea is we're all in this together, in this, this era of the Anthropocene, time of the climate collapse, of loss of biodiversity, of ocean acidification, pandemics, you name it. We all know that we need a huge paradigm shift in order for survival, and also collaboratively we really believe that this needs to be a networked approach where we can learn from each other in equal ways. I will leave it at that for the moment, but I would love to get questions and continue the conversation also otherwise. Thank you.
안녕하십니까. 백남준 아트센터에서 일하고 있는 김성은입니다. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Sung Kim, and I am the director of the Namjoon-baek Art Center. Recently, the future of art museums is an actively discussed topic. The pandemic has triggered social changes and is also throwing questions to art museums on the relationship and role of art and technology. Today's theme, Future Museums Practice and Activism, I believe is a very important and urgent issue. As a person working at the Namjoon-baek Art Center, a museum dedicated to a single artist, I hope to find the activism of the time in artists. Namjoon-baek was a member of the activist art network Fluxus. To quote Baek in 1964, he said, "As an artist, I am against all political conduct." Also, in 1970, in an essay released in the Global Growth and Video Comment Market, he mentions ecology, that ecology is fundamentally a comprehensive exploration of life and that design is ecology. Around that time, on Earth Day, he criticized that ecology is only being treated as a makeshift or a local anesthesia, and went on to say that ecology is not politics, but a devoteful Weltanschauung, which believes in world design, global recyclization, the shift of our attitude from you or me to you and me. As you see, Baek opposed to political behavior. He emphasized ecology and denied that it is politics. This seems that he is negating the political characteristic of activism. However, what he was opposed to is the political systems, the tools, the power and conflict of interest. His goal of converging art and technology to produce media art was ultimately to change and transform the world. In this sense, he is pursuing an extremely political art and activist art. This is a picture of an event in 1994 at the Seoul NY Max, a celebration of Arts Without Borders program. Baek is performing a program titled Piano Concert. Under the piano, there are fruits and radios and different objects. The piano is gradually knocked down, and at the end, Baek eventually throws himself down to the floor. At this Fluxus event, a discussion titled Liberation, Arts, and Cultural Imperialism also took place. You can see on the screen the meeting minutes written by Jonas Mekas. On the cover, when the panelists are introduced, Baek is described as a video art wizard and Fluxus politician. Baek believed that art should intervene in the world, and to this end, he wished to develop a way to communicate and share thoughts through his media. He wanted his media art to become the time and space for assembly. This is why his media art is about creating new relationships in the time and space mediated by humans, machines, and nature via his media art. The Namjoon-baek Art Center is based on such art created by the artist. As such, we are making effort to become media that can trigger a diverse array of assemblies. In other words, how art museums can create new common front lines and camps through such assemblies, and how to doubt existing social relationships to open new relationships. How we can become such media are the questions that we throw at ourselves. Activism here is not just about activism to directly change the world. It includes a stage to gather and ponder together, and a stage that can gather collective intelligence. New knowledge, new potential for practice can be born by creating a zone that can cultivate collective body. Today, digital technology is continuously expanding the online and virtual worlds. These worlds are definitely not completely non-physical. Technological development not only led to artificial intelligence, but also to artificial metabolism. And within such technological metabolism, the substructure, the structural power relationship and inequality embedded in the accessibility of resources should not be neglected. Last week, the Namjoon-baek Art Center started an exhibition titled Camp After Media Promises. Camp is a group of artists, a collective studio based in Mumbai, and has been awarded the Namjoon-baek Art Center Prize. While not neglecting humanity, the artists have hands-on experience with technology. Technology is not portrayed to have a fixed function or destiny. It is shown to be controversial, unstable, and with cracks. To this end, we have collaborated with various counterparts. We created a small village broadcaster with Nepal migrant women in India. With sailors on cargo vessels traveling across the West Indian Ocean, we created a video media project. The artists of the camp in an interview said that it is quite a transformative time we are living in. It used to be that contemporary art was all about being open-ended, a bit shapeless and indeterminate, but we are against that. We think it is time to be lucid and to be ambitious. They said that art is not a blur filter. Art needs to participate in reshaping the world. The exclusive, monopolistic power structure of the substructure of technology is not something to merely comment about and move on. We need to go directly into the infrastructure. Art, too. Art museums as well should actively deal with the activism of artists. Art museums should go beyond merely accepting the work of artists. They should support the diffusion of such actions and become a media, a channel, a stage for the assembly of such actions. I believe that this is the power of media art museums that contributes to social sustainability. Thank you.
Hi everyone, and thanks for inviting me to contribute to this key gathering. I would like to introduce you to the strategy used by We Are Museums to leverage social, technological, and environmental innovation to guide museums through change. When we talk about the climate crisis, the need to change our systems of thinking and our organizational models become urgent. If we want to ensure sustainable futures, one-off innovation is not enough. So from the yearly conference that we organized for 8 years, we understood that we needed to reach much larger scales of impact by seeking systemic innovation. To identify more circular and sustainable organizational models, we actually got inspired by nature, by natural ecosystems. What is crucial for us is that we are looking to build ecosystems that facilitate change rather than project one-off partnerships. We no longer only focus on the format or the end result of our projects, but on their ability to nurture an ecosystem and create waves of change. Nature thinks in terms of ecosystems first, reflecting on the interdependence and the functionality of each species. An ecosystem is a biological community of organisms interacting with each other and within a physical environment. A healthy ecosystem includes several species that perform similar functions and roles. Let's take an example to better understand this. So let's imagine that this beautiful grassland is completely destroyed by fire, and that the main plant providing food for the soil has disappeared. A second, previously less abundant plant might actually be better adapted to the new soil conditions and become the new dominant plant in the meadow. As long as the composition of the new plant fulfills the same role as the previous one, the grassland will be able to survive the fire intact and even grow stronger. Through the redundancy of environmental functions, the ecosystem becomes sustainable and at the same time become more strong and can adapt to change. So basically what we understand from nature is that it teaches us that cooperation, mutual benefit, and symbiotic relationships are key. So basically we try to learn from that and start to look at all the different projects that we run as a portfolio of projects. We don't want to run one project after the other, but everything at the same time. And that's really the totality of the projects that we are running, which can have a positive impact on the system as a whole. Basically, also, this really helped us to understand that if we invest all our resources in one project, in one event, in one partnership, failure can be critical, can be catastrophic. And we already experienced that, unfortunately. On the other hand, if you multiply experiences and projects and partnerships, you can create an ecosystem of innovators and innovative projects that constantly reinforce each other and allows us to learn even from failure. We actually try to give coherence in what we do at We Are Museums by following 7 big goals. Each of them deals with different sides of what the museum needs to change or needs to consider if they want to move forward, if they want to reply and to adjust and to be adapted to the future generation. So for instance, I just picked 4 of them now, which are main one for this year. But in the 7 goals, we are focusing on the future of collections, on social cohesion and cultural diversity, on climate justice and future literacy, on anti-fragility, regeneration, and also all these new spaces and mindsets born from technological innovation. These 7 goals are actually unpacked by so many different projects, by so many different people, by so many different kind of small or big actions. And how we are actually creating all these projects, it is thanks to our online community. So we basically opened an online community right at the beginning of the pandemic last year, which is now welcoming almost 2,000 museum professionals. And this community is so diverse, caring and needing actually to share and to talk and to discuss about so many different projects and so many different topics and so many different challenges, that we are this amazing place, amazing bed for deep listening and understand where museums could actually go. And from each of these new ideas and conversation, a new project is actually being born. So for instance, just to give you an overview, even just this year, we created a 7-month program to support 16 museum professionals in Lithuania in their ecological transition. This resulted in 4 projects to encourage climate action and systemic change. We also created an online conversation space around the blockage and opportunities for museums to consider digital as a mindset and as a behavior and not as a tool anymore. This was called Beyond Digital. We also created a similar format of discussion, actually 7 of them, in strong collaboration with ARKO Art Center. And the topic was about understanding what a collection means today and for the future generation. We also published a beautiful guidebook about immersion in museums that we brought together thanks to the program we led last year about this topic. We are today right in the middle of a big program around video games and museums. to facilitate collaboration between both. And we are about to launch another huge program around Web3 and NFTs, which will end with 8 weeks hackathon to produce 8 prototypes of use of NFTs by museums. I'm not telling you who are the partners, but they were huge and they were so diverse. For instance, I quickly talked about 𝐈𝐧𝐭𝐞𝐫𝐧𝐚, but also the French Embassy in the United States, the Smithsonian, EIT Climate Kicks, the Tezos Foundation, One by One. We really always try to gather all these people to create projects. And again, that's really this portfolio of projects that we are trying to foster and to amplify as much as we can. Thank you so much. I hope this was a good start for a good conversation, and I can't wait for our panel discussion. Thanks.
Art is infinity, ellipsis, multiplicity, endlessness, potentiality, possibility, but not just. It's also infinity minus infinity. Given inescapable historical contingency, its cultural expression subject to the differentiated determinations of economy, politics, racial and colonial capital, graphs of carbon concentration disfigure art's poetics in the centuries-long sweep of the racial Capitalocene. Art is imaginative liberation. It opens a portal to conceptual speculation, strums with emotional intensities, materializes a radical difference within the intolerability of oppression, the patterning of everyday life, its banalities and constraints. Art's momentum decolonizes the mind, emancipates the future, at least to some degree, even in the greatest state of unfreedom, making intolerable life livable. Art is collective emancipation, a mode of thinking and acting together, of living otherwise, beyond the impositions of competitive individuation. It helps us value what hasn't yet been destroyed, raising up the undervalued, the disenfranchised, centering the dispossessed. Art can also be the practice of mutual aid, of feminist caretaking, of multi-species love, beginning with our multi-species selves. Aesthetics gives form to collective belonging, materializing solidarity, even if not objectifying it, providing, under the right circumstances, insurgent political belonging within lives otherwise alienated, within surveillance capitalism, anti-social media, algorithmic governance, neo-colonial extractivism. Let's consent to not being singular. Art can be a mode of real survival under deadly circumstances and a source of singular joy within life-threatening climate emergency. Altering institutions, it can reconfigure reality. As process, event, relationality, it can open a world to come within the lived experience and cruel expectations of futurelessness against all odds. Art becomes a place to live, a houseless home, a space in which to breathe, and when we breathe together. Art is critical interrogation, the piercing analysis of ideological conditions, including situating one's own social, racial, and economic privileges, vulnerabilities, and privations. Through its lens, grotesque inequality, violent oppression, intolerable images come into view. It also offers the imagination critical infrastructure to transcend them. As conceptual phase shift, art can bring real material transformation, not simply escapist imagination, even if escapism and false solutions also remain a possibility, even a likelihood within the neoliberal culture industry. Art is a training ground for the future. Under the right circumstances, art provides the infrastructure for transcending social divisions, including those of liberal identity politics and its divide and conquer tactics. With its constructive situations, we can move beyond the limits of ethno-nationalist identification, of white supremacy, of heteropatriarchy, all of which obscure class antagonisms and destroy coalitions. That's because the most liberated art represents and encourages and enables a solidarity of equality that is multiracial and working class in the expanded sense of grouping those who work for a living, who provide the labor that makes the world run, including informal, domestic, and unpaid, precarious labor, exploited, insecure, unemployed, houseless, and undocumented. Radical art positions itself against racial and colonial capitalism, including those who own the means of production of a world that is set on destroying itself socially, politically, economically, and environmentally. Climate justice is racial justice, is migrant justice, is labor justice, is queer justice, is economic justice, is multi-species justice. The horizon of emancipation is collective liberation. Art documents violence, but also provides juridico-political interventions, real materialist transformation, institutional change, institutive becomings, cosmopolitical speculations and realizations. It works to hold perpetrators responsible for climate crimes, for crimes against the earth and its diverse beings, for ecocide and genocide, even while the legal forums that exist remain inadequate, were always designed by and for the powerful. But art also invents new forms to imagine and realize justice beyond and in despite of the law, where law fails justice, oppresses, and justifies violence. Art offers an onto-epistemological intervention. It's a mode of worlding, or de-worlding, or re-worlding. Aesthetic interventions can dramatically shift cultures and participate in, catalyze, in the invention of new ones. Art is creative world building, practiced on an everyday basis as an inextinguishable human and therefore multi-species capacity, an irrevocable attribute of life itself, even while life remains so thoroughly damaged and multiply colonized. There's no future of ecological sustainability, of multi-species flourishing, of socioeconomic justice and political solidarity, of equality and equity, of diversity and inclusion without the creative and artistic imagination that will first dream of those things, represent them, and offer stories that compellingly describe them, and offer images that make those futures compelling, that allow us to feel and desire them. And no such future will ever exist if we don't commit the collective labor of realizing them, according to a truth that must be grounded in histories of oppression, according to which the most excluded must be seated at the table and included in the discussion, not as a token or exemplary representative, but on the basis of equality that comes as the result of struggle. We need new algorithms of life and land, new futures from suppressed pasts, survival beyond imperial modernity. Remember the future. As we face the end of the world, the end of racial and colonial capital, the end of its militarized and policed regimes, it's up to all of us to join the forces of global struggle, of structural transformation, laboring toward eco-socialism and multi-species justice, where art is a practice, a rehearsal, and an audition for the collective subject we must become, inventing the we of the post-Anthropocene, a we that rejects exterminism, genocide, and ecocide, and contests the false solutions of green capitalism, just as it rejects the false authoritarianisms of past socialisms, and that forms the historical and future subject of change. Art is infinity beyond infinity. Thank you.
So we'll begin again. There was a short audio problem. So we just finished the 5 presentations. And in the Nothing Makes Itself Arts Council Korea, the curator talked about the different concepts of space and transcending space. The trans or recorporation of the concepts were developed. All of these presentations talk about ecosystem and talks about the relationship between humans and natures and different ecosystems. The research and practice and actions, policies seems to be all connected when we listen to the different presentations. So I would like to thank all the presenters for this very interesting presentation. Now I would like to begin the second part of the symposium. I will go over and summarize the presentation shortly and also ask questions to the presenters individually. I would like to begin with Ms. Catherine Bottrill. For the past 13 years, you worked on data, developing methodologies and establishing partnerships to trigger climate action in the visual arts sector. And you shared your experience you had with Julius Bicycles. You mentioned that the climate action is the result of visual arts neglecting its relationship with human and nature, and that you also said that we need to create space for conversation for the future. The online platform of our exhibition this time, there is a satellite project, and the title is The Art of Zero. And your project is very similar to our project. So they're using solar power and different types of technology. They are using eco-friendly material to develop the projects, and those methodologies are being shared online. So it's in Korean, and so we cannot share that with you in English today. But for those who you are watching the YouTube, please note that, and please get a chance to visit the online platform of Nothing Make itself. You mentioned that the visual arts sector is only in a very preliminary stage of climate action. You said that we can reduce climate footprint by reducing and rethinking about the climate footprint of the visual arts sector today in terms of transportation and mobility and buildings. And I think you are developing quantitative data at the moment. You are developing different indicators and measurements. So I think this will help alert us all. And what type of efforts and who are you working with in what sector to develop these type of partnerships with different sectors to come up with quantitative data?
Yes, thank you. Yes, so first of all, we've had over the years at Julius Bicycle a number of research partnerships. So working with the University of Oxford to help and working with the climate scientists and sustainability professionals there to ensure that the methodologies and approach are really grounded in the best science. And then there's an initiative called the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, which provides some methodologies that are global in how to calculate carbon footprint. And the three core areas for those calculations are direct emissions, which are related to energy and fuels. The second is electricity, because even if you're an arts institution, you can't necessarily control how your energy generation company sources it, whether it's coal or whether it's a renewable source. So that's the second area. And then the third is probably the biggest area for the arts, which is called Scope 3. And so these are all the emissions related to the goods and services, and also all that audience travel. So there's some internationally recognized methodologies that are supporting arts organizations to do that calculation. And then Julie's Bicycle, we've created some free online tools. So I would really encourage everybody to check those out. And also the Gallery Climate Coalition also has developed some tools which we have aided them in developing. So these can start to give artists and organizations a sense of what is their carbon number. And once you have calculated that number, then you can start really talking about how to reduce that number. And the other thing which I just wanted to say, which has been really helpful for arts organizations, is to think about their environmental policy. So we do a lot of work to help organizations kind of orientate themselves to how they want to engage with this issue. And we've heard some wonderful examples from the other panelists today about the different way artists and organizations are interacting. But if you have a environmental policy, it can really help facilitate that conversation as you commission and work with the artist community. And then the second piece related to that is to have the action plan. And so the action plan is sort of, what are you going to do this year to reduce those impacts and to work with the artists and your audiences?
Thank you for the answer. The ARKO Museum is putting importance on environmental practice, but still we are relying on common sense rather than scientific evidence at the moment. And I hope that we will be able to learn from your experience, your scientific evidence methodology. Thank you.
Next up, let's go to the second speaker, Ms. Yasten Ostendorf. So let me summarize her talk. She explained to us her work is really to replace the existing unjust systems based on capitalism, imperialism, and patriarchy, and to replace it with a new system based on justice. So her work is really to design this system. And Green Art Lab Alliance, encompassing 50 organizations worldwide, it's a type of international knowledge alliance. So in different regions may need different type of strategy. So sharing experience and knowledge is important. That's my understanding. So, and the Gallas Foundation, so I looked at their webpage, and I found there's a research results book uploaded on the website. So I wonder how this research came about, and as a result of that research, what's your understanding of Korea's climate action status, and what's your prospect for Korea in terms of climate action?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Well, I mean, the climate collapse doesn't stop at the border. So it's really, I really believe it needs to be an international effort. And that's why it's been so important and so interesting to work with these 50 organizations who are actually located in 43 different countries. So all these different countries, of course, have their own different languages and specificities. And in the case of Korea, we're working with an amazing partner called Listen to the City, doing very interesting work, teaching the rest of the alliance also about what are the specificities in Korea. And for instance, they've been doing a lot of interesting work also around food. So raising awareness also about the consumption of meat, working with the Buddhist nuns in activism, which I found extremely inspiring because they have actually proven to be really amazing activists, the nuns, but also doing interesting work around the environmental impact of hydroelectric dams, for instance. And other projects around gentrification in the city. So I think these are all topics that are well, quite specific to this Korean context, but are also, of course, connected to some of our other partners in China, for instance. You know, if you're talking about hydroelectric dams, but also it's a huge issue in Brazil and parts of Latin America. And I think to be able to have that kind of knowledge exchange on such, you know, Brazil might be so far away from Korea, but then for these organizations to be able to have a conversation about hydroelectric dams and how they are planning their protests, for instance, sharing skills on how you organize these types of protests, because that's you know, also a precarious kind of endeavor, let's say. has been really important. And I think that also shows, I mean, I mentioned in my presentation also, you know, this entanglement with these geopolitical histories of power. And I think particularly working in this Latin American context, that has become painfully clear how present that still is. So to be able to have that exchange on such a global level has been really important. And then your question regarding the research is very much bottom up. So it's never the foundation or the network saying, we're going to research this, but it's one of the partners saying, we need more knowledge on non-toxic artist materials, or we need more knowledge on, well, whatever it might be. And then we get like a group together to start researching this, and, you know, not only have a conversation about the actual research results, but also about the language in which we communicate that, you know, which terms resonate in one context but doesn't resonate in another context. Even terms like sustainability, even terms like climate change. And a piece of research in which that also became very clear, that I didn't mention so much in my presentation, but I would love to invite you to have a look at that, is what's called the Future Materials Bank. And that's an online platform, database, again, which came out of this need from artists to have more knowledge on, you know, where your materials come from, how you recycle them, about suppliers, transparency, all these things. And the Future Materials Bank is really an open source platform for that. So an invitation for artists to share their projects, to share their knowledge, to even share their recipes, you know, looking at biomaterials, for instance. And so, yeah, it's very much driven from, well, it's very much bottom up. So the research is always like that, I would say.
네, 감사합니다.
Gallas Foundation is a symbiosis-based organization. So about moving away from capitalistic system, so offered some alternative to fight the climate change. So in a bottom-up way, mutual learning paradigm you're showing, which is very interesting. Thank you very much.
Next, I would like to ask a question to the director of the Namjoon Baek Art Center, Ms. Seung-eun Kim. In your presentation, you start with the quote from Namjoon Baek. You said that you are trying to find the activism of the time in artists, and you said that he, in the 1960s and 70s, you said that Namjoon Baek said that ecology is not politics but a devoutful 𝐸𝑧𝐭𝐞𝐫𝐧𝐚𝐿, which believes in world design, global recyclization, the shift of our attitude from you or me to you and me. 50 years has passed, but it still resonates in all of us, I think. He said that, you also said that Baek promoted political activism while being very opposed to the political systems and political conflicts of interests. So that kind of separation, I think, was very interesting as well. You also said that the artist wanted to create a stage, a platform for assembly through his media art. And you said that his vision shows us the future direction of museums today. So in terms of this concept of assembly, what efforts are you making to ensure that the art center is becoming a stage of assembly? That is my question. Thank you for the question. Like you mentioned, the artist Namjoon Baek in the 1960s and 70s had an idea for the relationship between media art and nature. And decades have passed. His art universe, and to expand this concept, if we can look into the contemporary art in general, and if we can use the definition of media by Namjoon Baek, And how to apply that to today's world, I think something that deserves our attention, and we need to continuously think about this topic. So we try to come up with some keywords and try to go into that. For example, shared land, or I also talked about assembly today. So these type of concepts have been developed from those questions that we have talked about earlier. So assembly, stage, shared land. Also, if you think about these concepts and then think about media, media is we are trying to define media as an environment rather than a tool. And you also talked about nature and ecology. There has been a lot of discussion on these topics today. And the media as an environment includes natural environment, but it also includes technological existence. Not just human beings, but we have non-human existence in the theoretical aspect, or the minority, or the groups that have been excluded and neglected by society. So we want this media as an environment to include a diverse array of perspectives. We want to bring all of those perspectives together, and we believe that the art museum needs to be a place where people come and learn and feel those different perspectives. I think that is the ultimate goal of contemporary art museums today. And since we are rooted in the work of Namjoon Baek, we are an artist-dedicated museum. So we are trying to use the work of Namjoon Baek to talk about different types of perspectives, different types of existence, different types of theories, and so on. Even if they do not have to come to the physical art museum, maybe it can be some education program of the museum, it can be an online platform. But through whatever channel, if people come together, we are able to assemble. So when people assemble, they are able to share their experiences, and then at the end of the day, maybe develop a new community. But we are not too focused on developing the community itself. I believe that it can be a chance to practice the discomfort that we may feel when we are with people that are different from us. So that is the purpose of assembly. So if you're watching us on YouTube, if you cannot hear us, please make sure that you write that on the chat box. This is being operated live, so there may be some technical issues. Please let us know right away. Thank you, Ms. Sang-eun Kim, for the answer. So the Namjoon Baek artist, if he was alive, I think he would have come to our symposium today, and we would have a very interesting talk with him as well. But like you said, Ms. Kim, trying to develop new common front lines through the assembly on media art environment, I think is what we are trying to pursue as a symposium today.
Next, we're going to talk about the presentation by Ms. Diane Drube. For sustainable futures, museums cannot be satisfied with a single model. So we are a museum who has been researching cultural art institutions' innovations. So you explained to us what your activities are, and various speakers today shared with us how they find ideas from the natural ecosystem for the social system. And in your talk, what was particularly interesting was that digital is no longer a tool, but is a mindset. So that argument was quite impressive. So, and also NFT, you mentioned in your talk. A museum, an art museum which belongs to the public sphere using NFT technology. You briefly mentioned it in your talk just now, but can you please further elaborate on this, how museums can use NFT?
Yeah, with pleasure. And yeah, as you rightly pointed, I feel that in every innovation, shall it be social, environmental, or technological, we can actually find new models, new ways to do what we do, and find actually inspiration to constantly change and evolve. And it's really this ability to constantly change, which is making our society stronger, and hopefully our organizations stronger as well. So yeah, NFTs is definitely a big trend. Why is it such a trend? I actually feel it's because it's directly replying to the current social and financial crisis that we are all living. I see NFTs not from the technological perspective only, but also as a social movement, raising new models, new ideals for our society, new ways of interacting with each other, new ways of distributing resources. So just to, really briefly, NFTs and public institutions it's a really, really new story, a really fresh journey. We saw few museums and art institutions using NFTs as a new art medium. So they are starting to exhibit NFTs and to collect NFTs as well, but also as a new source of income to support the renovation of artworks or monuments. But I believe that this is very simple and quite obvious uses of NFTs. And if we really want to embrace this technology as a new model shift, we need to start experimenting. And it's basically what the Whitworth Gallery in Manchester did. A few months back, they experienced with NFTs and especially the distribution model behind it. So they basically saw NFTs as a new way to share resources with communities by giving access to art and art speculation as well to the broader audience. So it was more a social and financial experiment using NFTs as a tool to share resources. And so this is one example, and I hope much more will actually come as soon as people understand the potential of it. We are really at the beginning of it, so it's difficult to go further, but I think it could be really important today to really understand the culture and what are the people, who are the people, and what are the different communities around the NFT space. It is, as I said, not just a technology. I feel in 2020, it's really, as I said, a new social movement. Why is it a new social movement, and why blockchain was not so much such a social movement, but more a new organizational movement? Is because today we actually see very low entrance barrier. If you want to enter all these carbon-friendly blockchains, like Tezos, like Solana, like other blockchains, the entrance is very, very low. So it's very, very diverse. Everyone can start minting an NFT. It is not depending on where you are based. It is not depending on your culture. It is not depending on how tech savvy you are. It is not depending on actually the access to technology or even to financial resources. Like everyone can actually start minting an NFT with a mobile phone. Everyone can start becoming a creator with a mobile phone, and everyone can start becoming a collector as well. And I've seen amazing people from everywhere, from Colombia, Brazil, Malaysia, Philippines, and really from everywhere, starting a new life. They're basically starting a new career because they can finally have access to all these models, all these things which were unfortunately mostly used and mostly powered by just a small group of people on this planet. So, all these differences are slowly getting dissolved, and slowly we are starting to see a very decentralized and very inclusive social model. And if you add on top of that DAOs, which are decentralized autonomous organization, it's basically the digital form of a cooperative. There you really see a new social model appearing. You really see this fully decentralized and super inclusive and diverse group of people just trying to find another way to live in the society, because obviously the society was not actually giving them a place. So it's what we are currently living is very, very exciting. Finally, we can give a voice to the one who would never had the place that they should have. We can finally amplify the voices of everyone. So yeah, I hope this is just replying to your question.
네, 사실 굉장히 초기 단계이기 때문에.
Yes, because we are still in the early days. Yes.
네, 저희도 많이 연구가 필요한.
I think that this is an interesting area where we need to do much more research down the road. But decentralized and democratized system, a new type of artistic ecosystem, it's a technology that we can use for that kind of purpose. That's my take on your talk. So if further research is done, I hope we will have another opportunities to have exchange on this topic.
Yes, and Mr. TJ Demos is not unfortunately with us today, but he did give us some comments and questions. So in his presentation, he mentioned that we can act together to champion value that has been damaged or is being undervalued at the moment, and that anti-colonialism, that the emancipation of future, the power to ensure the interoperability of life. Art can also be the practice of mutual aid, feminist care, taking of multi-species, and that aesthetics provide collective belonging and materializes solidarity. He also talked about the importance of the contribution of art in social transformation. So in his presentation, it's very unfortunate that he is not able to attend the discussion today, but in the International Council of Museum, CIMAM, C-I-M-A-M, he made a keynote speech. So for the audience, this is a reference that you can look into after the symposium. So Mr. Demos and Ms. Yasmin, I think threw us a similar question, the impact of visual arts on climate action. And this was also a question raised by Ms. Catherine, how this can be discussed amongst ourselves. And she also mentioned that this is the result of visual arts neglecting climate action in the past. So I think this is a topic that cuts across everyone. Would you like to start discussions amongst yourself? So I think this is a topic that we can discuss amongst the presenters first. So if you would like to speak, or if you can raise your hand, we will get you to the opportunity to speak. So what contribution can visual arts make to climate action? This is the question for all of you. That this is a result of society neglecting visual arts, and therefore this climate crisis has occurred. So I think this question was first raised by one of the presenters, Catherine. So Catherine, maybe you would like to go?
Yeah, I think that the highlight, what I thought the last presenter and his presentation about the importance of climate justice and also this idea of multi-species, you know, that we share the planet with many different people and also very many different living things. And I think the visual arts can really help. And one also, I think the visual arts of the art forms has huge public audiences. So it has this real opportunity to open up the space for voices that have been more marginalized. And I think that's what we're seeing, especially in the last couple of years, and some of the other speakers can speak to this as well, is how the visual arts are really bringing to the table people that have been less heard and are at the frontiers of feeling the climate impacts. And I know that at Tate, who we've done a lot of work with, that they've been involved in citizens' assemblies and also thinking about the programming and the artists that they commission to be, you know, platformed through Tate. And so I think that's something, one action that every arts organization can think about is, you know, who are they working with? How representative are they working with? And how accessible, you know, are they to audiences? Are they reaching out to new audiences and developing their new audiences? And I think for especially younger people, this theme of climate action and climate justice is really important to them. So it also offers a really exciting opportunity to bring in new audiences into your organizations.
Yes, Yasmin?
Yeah, I'd love to continue on this topic of multi-species collaboration, because it's a topic that many artists are working with, and it's I think it's very important. And I think it's important in the arts because when we're talking about multi-species collaboration, it can also be, you know, with microscopic life, with bacteria, with fungi, with viruses, which means that we need to have a lot of imagination, because a lot of it, you know, sometimes you cannot see, or we don't know what the fungus might feel like. So I think the arts provide this space for imagination and for speculation, but also to work across disciplinaries, or across disciplines, because, you know, you see in all sectors that people have to engage with the climate collapse somehow. And the richness of our sector is that we can, you know, we can take a little bit from all these different sectors. We can use speculation as a tool. We can traverse between that, which is a luxury that other disciplines not always have, because it needs to be more factual, or it needs to be representational, or it needs to be reported to their stakeholders. So I think this kind of relative freedom, even though I'm not saying the arts is free, but this relative freedom that we have in the arts to traverse the different disciplines, to use the imagination and to use speculative scenarios is actually crucial for this idea of multi-species collaboration.
말씀 감사합니다. 지금
Thank you for your talk. So here at ARKO exhibition, like you said, multidisciplinary collaboration we're dealing with in our exhibition. So to expand on the climate, sensory, and perception. So a chance to look back on our worldview. This is the feedback we get from our visitors. I think that kind of imagination is the power of art.
Yes, Ms. Seong-Eun Kim, I would like to add a brief comment. So the question was the contribution of visual arts. So as a person working at an art museum, one of the more recent kind of topic or hot buzzword these days, I think, especially given that there is a global pandemic going on. So the problems associated with the ecosystem, but visual arts cannot directly solve this problem. But what is the unique role then that can be played by visual arts? So art galleries and the role of visual arts, I believe that when we think about nature or ecosystems and the challenges, it's not just about right and wrong and trying to find the direct answer to that. I think art gives us an opportunity to stop for a second and from an abstract or universal or scientific views, we can try to rethink them and try to connect them with our ordinary lives, with our imagination as well. So it can be a kind of imaginative space that can bring in a lot of different opinions. So the abstract and universality or the ecosystem, the natural contaminations, we can try to look it from a diverse array of artistic perspectives and try to help us better understand to develop more feasible projects. Thank you. Diane, do you have any comments?
Not especially. I think what has been said is already gathering everything. Just maybe a thought when I was listening to everyone. I actually feel that a space to express yourself as an artist is often missing. Like we are coming from a model which is not giving a lot of space to artists and not giving a lot of free space, meaning that it is. I feel it's quite still quite exclusive. If we want to give a global space, if we want to give a space for everyone to be heard by a big number, so basically trying to make it to make myself a bit more clear. Artists, most of the time, they have to go through different stages to actually enter the art market, to enter the art world. While what I see with NFTs is that even if you know nothing about art and you want to express yourself through art, you can have an audience. While the classical model is not always providing these types of audiences, and you can also have a local audience as well as an international one, and that's why actually pushing the borders of your art audience is really something which is necessary today, as well as being able to be fully anchored in your territory. So yeah, just going back on what I said before, we are just at the beginning of something, so we just need to experiment, but at least knowing what we don't want anymore, and giving and amplifying the voices of the one wanted to say it loud is already a huge step.
Yasmin, do you have anything more to add?
Yeah, I just thought of it now. I'd love to add, because I see also a lot of artists working with the senses, which I think is a really powerful way of communicating, big complex things such as climate or biodiversity loss or ocean acidification or all these complex issues we're talking about. And we don't always learn just by reading, or just by reading a science report. Or so it's been interesting is also following artists who are using smell and touch and different and audio. So I find that also really interesting and important, as a contribution that the arts can make, is really using the senses.
Yes, so the exhibition that we have, Nothing Makes Itself, we are also introducing data and various scientific methods. So in the past, we would have read all of that in text, but now that we are able to see them in an exhibition, I think it really triggers the imagination and expands the senses of people. So I think this really shows the power of visual arts, and I think it also shows the necessity of visual arts in this area. Thank you for all of your comments. And then if I can move on to the second topic today. In Korea, there are many different climate-related policies, of course, like any other country. But it's focused on industry, usually, and business. So in order to, and all of that is quite limited to achieving carbon neutrality. And Professor T.J. Demos, I think, raised the question of how we are going to resist to this approach. The government-led top-down approach, I think, should be refrained. We believe that there should be more bottom-up approach from the artists and from the people. It can be supplementing each other. And I think this was a topic that was discussed about today, a bottom-up networking and participation, different perspectives. So maybe you can, all of you, add a little bit on this topic. Who would like to go first? I think that Julie's Bicycle, some time ago, the UK Art Council, together with them, talked about carbon neutrality policies. You developed with them the carbon policies for the art sector of the UK, and so it's government-led, I guess, in one sense. It's related to the Paris Agreement. And then also, you are trying to work together with the many different private organizations in the art sector. So I think it was a collaboration of all of these different organizations. What was that experience like?
Yes, and I think we've got one project particularly that I think is really interesting that we're doing at the moment, which is with 30 of the largest art organisations that are funded by Arts Council England. And we've been working with them now for 4 years, going into 5 years, and we've worked to set science-based targets for these 30 organisations and to support them as a group on how to move into their net zero. So we've had a real focus on buildings in that programme. And I would say, and it's really supporting each of those organizations in energy management, but also what infrastructure and investment is needed to achieve net zero. So this is a lot around the lighting equipment, but then for museums, there's obviously a lot of climate condition needs for protecting the artwork. So really working with these organizations to figure out how they can better run their buildings and make that business case to make that change that they can be net zero. And then now within that group of 30, more of them are looking at the scope 3. So now we've kind of building out, and that's, I would say, going into year 5, we've got more organizations doing their scope 3 report. And in fact, and so that's 30 organizations, but in addition, we have the Tate, which I mentioned earlier, is another organization that is declared net zero, and we did their full carbon footprint report, and they've put in a roadmap now on how they want to achieve that net zero. And I would say at the moment we've got 2050 as a key target, but many organizations that we work with are looking at 2030 or 2035. And so this is really exciting because this means that arts organizations are moving ahead of policy. They're trying to accelerate things even bigger and deeper. And I think these organizations are really great because within their cities, they're very prominent organizations. So they become a really good beacon for practice. And what we're seeing is also when they open their door to the visitors, they're starting to tell the story of that net zero journey.
Thank you for the great answer. Even in your presentation, you talked about climate action and cooperation with institutions, and you also talked about the importance of leadership, which I thought was very interesting, and I think that is in line with the answer that you just gave right now. I was listening to your answer, and I believe that ARKO Museum or Namjoon Baek Art Center, there can be roles played by art institutions, more specifically. If we can create networks with other private organizations, and then there are government agencies that have power. And so maybe we can be the intermediary between this government and private sector. There can be experience of the private sector, and that there can be leadership from the government that can be combined. We think that both pillars seem very important, and then it can be the kind of motivation that triggers change in the future. So I think there is a role to be played by art institutions as a bridge between the two. So is there any other presenter who would like to add comments on this topic? So in relation to this, let me try to ask another question. So there is research and practice about the art institutions. There are many projects that are going on, and we believe that network and solidarity is very important to share resources, knowledge, experiences, and we can all come together to achieve a common goal. So this is similar to eco-network. How can this type of networking change the way the art sector works in the future? And the cooperation and development of networks, what kind of strategies do you have to further enhance this? What kind of strategies and methodologies do you have for cooperation? If you can share your experience, I think that will be very helpful. Yes, Ms. Kim, Ms. Seung Kim, I think, was just a little bit quicker than Diane. So I was listening to the questions and the answers today, and as a director of an art museum, there are challenges as well. So let me just try to talk about the challenges and then how we believe we are going to address this. So the foundation that we belong to developed a policy. They introduced ESG management, and ESG is quite popular topic at the moment in the business sector. Environment, social, governance aspects are becoming very important. And so they're looking at the social aspect of corporates. And the business sector is trying to come up with different policies to achieve ESG management. So as an institution, we need to follow the policy of the foundation. And at the same time, we are an art gallery, which is unique on its own and is different from business and corporates. So the curators, in the process of their everyday work, needs to try to incorporate the language of ESG. So that is one kind of theme. And then, on the other hand, you can see on the background, you see our Namjoon Baek Art Center. Behind this building, there is a small hill. So our museum is not in the middle of the forest, but there is a small hill behind us. And it has become a small ecosystem. There are kind of different wild animals. You can see mushrooms. And so it has been largely untouched by human beings. And the artists like this hill. The artists want to do something with this hill. And sometimes they work on their projects here. So this is an example that I'm trying to give. So there is the policy side. And then there is the artist who wants to go on site to create. So there is a gap between the two, and we are trying to come up with ways to bridge this. So that is the kind of thought that we are thinking about these days. And this is the type of topic that I was hoping to discuss with you today. And then I have a question for the different presenters today. And all of the content of the presentations, I think, are based on cooperation and network. Without cooperation and network, a lot of it would not have been possible. And then we also have a keyword, sustainability. So for one institution to have a direction and a vision, and we as an art institution finds it difficult to sustain a project, but you are talking about working with many different organizations and many different artists, and to try to sustain that cooperation, I think, is also a very not an easy matter. So how do you do that? How do you cope with that? I think it will be very interesting to hear. So on this question, we have a presenter who is in charge of a very extensive global network. Diane and Yasmin, I think, can pitch in.
Yeah, I can go ahead. That's a very, very good question, actually, because in my presentation, I talked about the power of the portfolio of projects. So working on different projects, serving different topics, but going in the same direction and supporting the same values. But then, yeah, how to really sustain these relationships, I actually believe it's a question of human interaction first. So you need to create this strong relationship with individuals, and it's just most of our projects are actually beautiful relationships first. It's basically few people feeling that they want to do something together, and then trying to find a way to do it, basically. So this is how everything is starting most of the time. It has to grow in a very organic way, and nothing should be forced, nothing should be rushed or pressed as well. And then I think taking the time is also very important, really taking the time to listen, taking the time to interact, and taking the time to also build a safe space where you feel that you can ask or request everything that you want. It's this kind of very benevolent relationship which could actually foster this kind of strong relationships. Also, I would say having a space, of course, like having this benevolence, this safety of speech, but also having a space to actually meet. We can't meet globally. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we hear you well. Please go ahead.
Am I back?
Yes.
Yes, you're
okay. I'm very sorry. So I was basically saying that on top of this benevolence and this safety and taking the time to listen, we need to have a space. Basically, all these interactions are floating in the air through conferences, through emails, through meetings. But most of the time, as soon as the project is done, the relationship is more or less cut. So having a space where you can go back and then meet your old friends, kind of. So that's basically why we created the online community of We Are Museums. For 8 years, we organized this conference where it was really nice to meet people and create some beautiful moments together. But then we had no space to meet again. Then we had no space to ask a question. Then we had no space to share ideas. So yeah, basically it is an open space where all museum professionals can ask, share, connect on different topics, and the diversity of topics is also very important. Knowing that it's not just about climate, it is not just about new technology, but it's really about having this willingness to change and to evolve towards better future together. So yeah, I would say having a space is crucial.
Can I add to that? First of all, I concur with everything Diane's saying, 100%. So the issue indeed of trust and, you know, respecting also these cultural differences and really having a holistic approach to what sustainability and climate change means, because it also means something different in, you know, every different country. The realities, you know, are not equally distributed, let's say. On top of that, I would like to add that actually I think our strongest partners are, and I think all of them are like this, are really embedded in their communities. So they really have excellent knowledge of their locality. And that might sound like weird to say it's all about the locality when we're talking about international networks. But when an organization has these local relationships, when they know the local materials that can be used, when they know what the quality of their soil is like, when they know which plants, fungi, you know, animals are using their habitats also as their habitat, which are sharing their habitat with, I find that all of these partners actually provide the super important knowledge for all these other organizations. So the more they are embedded in their locality, the more they actually can contribute to this global network. And then you can also start, you know, having these conversations about, some of them are in very rural areas, some of them are in very urbanized areas. And so you can make this kind of what we do, like working groups on specific topics. So they might not be in the same continents. We also meet per continent, but you can find each other on different topics.
네, 균사체 네트워크 같은 어떤 그런 방법론으로.
So you talked about the RC Lilium network, and you talked about different ways to network and promote arts and promote relationships, and the independent and then the autonomous space is not enough. You need to organically connect them and try to circulate. So we need new concepts of space and time that can promote interaction. So I think that was very insightful answers. Thank you. We have about 5 minutes left. So is there anything that you would like to ask each other? So maybe you can use the last 5 minutes to ask any questions you have for each other. So all of the questions that were... So Diane, do you have a question for us?
Yeah, just to reply to actually to your last comment, and trying to actually sustain this relationship that we are building together today. Is there another event or maybe another project or something that else where we could all meet again? Is there another way to collaborate? And I believe like I'm also part of Museums for Future. It's a museum branch of Fridays for Future, and all the climate strikes are always very good opportunities for everyone to meet again and to join forces again. So yeah, my question is, what is the next event or the next opportunity for us to meet again and to collaborate?
Good question.
Excellent suggestion. Great. So us meeting on this online symposium today, I think this is all about creating a new space for us. And I really hope, again, that we will continue building a sustainable relationship among us. If there are no further questions, then COVID-19, in this crisis situation, as art institutions, we are being quite defensive in response to the pandemic, passive. So we feel helpless a lot of the times. But in this situation, through this type of reflection, the art's social role and alternative ways of operating museum, we could think about these topics through this time today. So your opinions today gave us a lot of inspiration. And COVID-19 event, before and after the COVID-19, how our activities in the future will evolve and develop. So I'd like to ask each of you to give us a comment about your prospects for the future for us, your activities.
Yeah, we'll start with Ms. Sung-eun Kim. Like you just mentioned, not just art galleries, but artists have been highly impacted by COVID-19, feeling helpless and powerless. For myself, this type of symposium, this type of event, that somebody is having the similar thoughts, someone is relating to me, someone wants to work together with me. So this type of opportunity, I think, is very helpful in trying to overcome that sense of powerlessness. I really feel that these days. And so our Namjunbaek Art Center originally tried to introduce and promote cooperative projects amongst local and international artists. And with the paradigm and with the pandemic and changing paradigm, I hope that we will be able to find new ways of cooperation in the future. So that I really actually have high expectations for this in the future. Yes, thank you for those comments. Does Yasmin and Diane also have comments?
Yeah, no, I think what I saw with a lot of partners in the network, that people have not been hit in equal ways. So particularly with a lot of the partners in Latin America, you know, they have lost funding, they have lost audiences, they had to shut their spaces, staff passed away of COVID. So it's been really a tough time, and actually then finding each other in that type of solidarity has been incredible, but also understanding that actually in the precarity of that situation, there's been an incredible resourcefulness of people. And that resourcefulness, I feel, is what we can really learn a lot from. So how do you continue to operate, you know, even if you might have lost your funding, or if you've lost, whatever it might have been, because they keep on going, and you become so inventive. And I feel if we start thinking about, you know, an exchange of resources in which resources are not only monetary, you know, they're not in terms of funds or publications, but also in strategies and tips and tricks in how you survive in an increasingly precarious world. There is a lot to learn from the people who were hit hardest. So yeah, I'd like to give that as a remark.
Yeah, the resources, not just the financial resources, but the experiences of other people and their wisdom. is also part of the resource. That's quite a touching comment from you, Yasmin. And as you were talking, on the chatting box, we have received a question.
This is a question for Julie's Bicycle. Catherine, so you have a lot of methodologies that you have accumulated. Did you cooperate with art institutions, with institutions outside of UK? Do you have plans to cooperate with other foreign institutions as well? I think you are muted. Want to try again? No, we cannot hear you.
오디오가 꺼진 것 같은데.
We cannot hear you. The audio seems to not be working at the moment. Can you try again? Hi, Catherine. Do you want to try speaking again? No, we cannot hear you. So I think we are having some technical difficulties because we are a live event. Really ask for your understanding. We cannot hear the audio of Catherine at the moment. This is unfortunate, but so we will try to get the answer from Catherine after this event, and we will try to post that on Instagram so that the person can receive the answer. I hope that this will work for you. Okay, thank you. Thank you for understanding. Yeah, and Diane, would you like to talk about your future plans?
Well, actually, less than talking about my future plans, I would like to reply to the comment of Yasmin. What she talked about and highlighted on the effect of COVID on our society is exactly what I believe as well. But I would like to add the humility. I actually find that a lot of museums, a lot of people, a lot of communities are now refocusing on what is the most important for them. And they actually try to not do too much or too fast. They finally, go back to what are the essentials and what is possible and what is the most important for them. I found that before we were having this tendency to do too much and to do too fast and thinking that we can do everything by ourselves. Actually, so many people trying to become this Superman or Superwoman while we are not. And actually, yeah, unfortunately, this situation really forced us to see that we are very fragile and we have to collaborate and together we can be stronger. So it's really this humility which was the most prevalent for me during the last two years. And yeah, talking about my next projects, giving more space for people to express themselves and to share and to learn from each other. Different programs, like today we will have our first conversation about Web3, metaverse, DAOs, and all these blockchain things, and museums, and we will have these conversations every week, like for 1 hour, just a meeting place. And that's basically what I was saying before, just having a place, virtually or physically, but just a meeting where everyone is welcome to express themselves.
Yasmin, we have 3 minutes left, so if you can be brief, it will be very appreciated.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to answer the question for Catherine. I also used to work at Julie's Bicycle, and then at least we have an answer, because the answer is yes. They do a lot of international work. They have an amazing international leadership program called Creative Climate Leaders, working with a lot of international arts councils on providing, advice on how to make this transition, which is similar to what they did with Arts Council England. There's many collaborations also in developing the resources. So the short answer is yes. And then maybe later Catherine can say more about it, but just so that we don't leave without an answer.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Lily. Thank you very much for your answer. So we talked about the future museums, practice and activism, and we had 5 presenters with us today. This is evening time in Korea, and in Europe, I heard that it is very early on in the morning. So I would like to thank everyone for participants. I would like to thank all of those who are watching on YouTube as well. This will be the end of the 2021 Arts Council Korea ARKO Museum Art and Tech Festival Nothing Makes Itself Symposium. Thank you, everyone.